Yo, welcome back to another video. It's your boy Coreythemaan. We back in here. We got two more videos to go, so let's go get right into it. Here we go.
The GTA 5 story mode does make sense overall from a story and lore perspective, but when you start to think about some things a little bit deeper, you start to dive a little bit deeper into the lore, some missions in particular just make no sense, and in today's video we will be talking about those in particular. And if you do enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. We are almost at 50,000 subscribers, halfway there, and once we get there it'll be pretty crazy. The first thing that really makes no sense to me is in the Evangelico heist, or the jewelry store heist, and that is when the crew is escaping the police in the LS River. Michael bashes into some cops with the truck, which is the Benson of course, and then at the end all of the bikes get inside of the truck. But what never made sense to me was that wouldn't the cops just put a bolo out on the truck? A bolo, if you don't know, is basically just a vehicle description of whatever vehicle they're looking for. They send it to all officers to be on lookout for that vehicle. I don't actually know what it stands for, but basically it's just, hey, look out for this vehicle, it is wanted for such and such reason. Like, after they just pulled a job like that, they would have had a helicopter in the air. They would have had so much more cops. Even if they got rid of all the cops on the scene, they would have called out that the Benson is right there. Now some people would say that, oh, he ends the heist very quickly by driving it into the lockup and then he covers the truck. Yes, but the cops will be swarming that area, absolutely swarming that area like a colony of ants. Kind of made no sense to me why the police never caught them after that, but in the game it does make sense because they can't have the heist lasting for too long, because then, you know, kind of cuts into player retention. But to me, and in the lore, it just makes no sense. Something else that made no sense to me about the jewelry store heist was that it made no sense for them to rob Evangelico, as Michael literally lives up the street from them. Now, I will kind of give them a sort of pass on this. I won't go too hard on them because this could be a scaling problem. In the lore, Michael could live a little bit far away from the jewelry store, and scaling as a whole in Los Santos is kind of cooked if you look at it as a overall picture. If you look at it as just one city, then yeah, it's all right, but it's meant to be like 5 different cities and areas. So technically Michael probably lives a bit further away from the jewelry store than we see on the physical map, but on the physical map he lives literally up the street. You can see his house up the street if you're in the air, like on top of the roof. It's ridiculous. Kind of made no sense why they chose that store when Michael lived right there. Especially because Michael is probably in this area a lot because of Amanda and Tracy, not so much Jimmy. He's shopping with them and he's showing his face a lot. Even though he never showed his face in the jewelry store heist, he kind of, you know, they just should have never robbed it in the first place. He lives way too close. The third thing that made no sense about the jewelry store heist was Michael saying the phrase, "You forget 1,000 things every day, pal. Make sure this is one of them." It was extremely reckless on his part. Ultimately, this is how Trevor finds out that he is still alive after all these years, as he said that Michael always said that quote from back in the old days.
You forget 1,000 things every day. How about you make sure this is one of them?
When they were robbing banks and whatnot. And I think Michael actually quoted it from a movie. He did not actually say that in the game, although it was in the script in real life, but in the game he kind of took that from a movie. That is not his quote. But just imagine, right, you were robbing banks in the old days back with your dude, and then the gang splits up out of nowhere. You rob another one because you kind of did something to prompt that, and out of nowhere you say the weirdest, most out of line phrase ever that only certain people would know. Certain people that you don't want to know that you are alive, by the way. You do not want these people knowing that you are still alive. You want them to believe that you are still 6 feet under in North Yankton. Why would you drop this phrase? It made no sense. It was the hardest quote in the whole game for sure, but from a lore perspective, it made no sense at all because Michael probably knows that Trevor still remembered that. Something that always made no sense to me, even when I was a kid playing this game, and don't ask why I was a kid playing this game, but anyways, Michael pretending to be dead in Dead Man Walking, because you can't just pretend to be dead, especially if you made it all the way to the coroner's office. They already know you're dead. There's no way to fake that at all. The paramedics would have had to resuscitate you. I'm not sure what would really happen because Davey knocks out Michael. I'm not sure if he just calls the cops and he's like, "Oh, I found a dead guy at the observatory." I guess it wouldn't be too out of pocket for Los Santos, but they would try to resuscitate him or treat him or something. He would not have made it to the body bag stage, and even if he did, they would see his chest moving, they would hear him breathing. It is incredibly hard to pretend to be dead. Maybe they tickle him a little bit like Diddy at the after party, then he starts moving. I don't know, but you can't pretend to be dead. That's a very hard thing to do. It made for a great scene. It made for a great mission. Obviously, that was kind of the only way he could get into there. Maybe pretend to be an Undertaker or something like we did in GTA Online to get in there. We did not have to pretend to be dead. Maybe Rockstar came to their senses, but in the story mode, it made no sense that Michael pretended to be dead to get into the coroner's office, because you can't do that. Like, they would know, trust me. Now we have when the crew is attempting to escape from the US Army and local state officials in the Polito score. They escape on a train, but police do not follow it, and this makes no sense at all. Now, some people might try to jump to conclusions and say that police didn't know that they went in the warehouse, therefore they didn't know that they hopped on the train. That's why they did not follow the train and put an end to it. But they literally had a shootout in the warehouse that's in the Cluckenbell factory. Like, there were officials in there. They knew they were in there, but they just chose not to do anything. It's not like trains could magically go off of the rails and somehow, you know, start flying out of nowhere like the DeLorean time machine. That doesn't happen. I think it would have made way more sense for the train to get somewhere, maybe to the actual rally point where they get off of and meet Agent Sanchez. But instead of meeting him there, the train gets stopped randomly and the crew's like, oh, what's going on? They hop out and they get ambushed by the police. Bam, cue the second gunfight. Now they have to escape on foot. Maybe they lose some of the money, or I don't know, because that money that you earn from that score kind of goes to waste. They do use it to do the bureau raid. That's why they actually do the heist to begin with, I think, to buy the chopper or something, to the cargo bob. But the money that the crew gets from it, it's completely useless if you ask me. Like, it's at an early stage, so you don't really have a point for the money. And then lore wise, like, there's just not really a reason for any of the crew members to have money. So if a second gunfight would have ensued, that would have been pretty epic, and then they escape, and then that would have been pretty cool, and it would have made sense in the lore as well. But as of now, and how the story played out, it made no sense why the police just didn't keep chasing it. Another escape attempt that made no sense to me is when the crew escapes the police in the Union depository job. The cops realistically would have set up a roadblock up ahead and stopped and checked every car and truck for the vehicles or suspicious persons. People, that's not even a word, because as we all know, in the car escape, I don't know what the helicopter one is called, but it's when they drive the two gauntlets into the trailer and then they drive out of the tunnel and the chopper calls it off. He's like, hey, let's get a unit down there. Realistically, he wouldn't say let's get a unit down there, he would call for a roadblock up the highway or on the right, because you can't really exit anywhere. They will search every car for every suspicious individual. They would probably search the trucks because they have reasonable suspicion to. They have reasonable cause because there could be a robber in one of these trucks. For the truck to just be able to go as it did without any further suspicion from law enforcement kind of makes no sense and is pretty unrealistic if you ask me. But of course, GTA 5 is not really a realistic game, so I won't hold that to them too much. But once again, kind of something that didn't make sense in the story mode. Next up, we have the bombshell that is the Merryweather heist. Pretty much everything in this heist makes no sense at all. Once again, maybe a scaling issue, but right after stealing an experimental super weapon, the crew stays at the same dock that they stole the super weapon from and goes to a warehouse not too far from the ship that they just sunk and blew up as well. If you just stole what is worth $20 million on the black market of a super weapon, you would get out of there. Realistically, it would have made more sense for him to take it maybe to some sort of coastal rendezvous point on the East Coast and get away from the docks as quickly as possible. Maybe in the lore perspective, it made no sense for him to take a submarine that far, hence why they didn't do it, but it's still like, it just makes no sense why they took it to the exact same dock, the super weapon that they just stole, the exact same dock, and just leave it there. Also, looking back on the mission, I think a lot more enemies should have been sent after us. Once again, we stole a super weapon from Merryweather, a giant militia, a private militia. But not that many come after us if you think about it. Franklin on the bridge only has one buzzard go up to him. He never shoots him at all. He just looks at him having a staring contest. Then he gets killed. It makes no sense at all why they didn't send more enemies after us. So that one really makes no sense. But the docks issue, I will give it to them because maybe, you know, the benefit of the doubt, it could be a scaling issue, and maybe in the game wise we took it to a separate dock, or I don't know. But how things actually played out, this heist was kind of a disaster realistically. And to end it off, probably the thing that makes the least amount of sense towards the end of the game is right after the Union depository job is complete and the gold is melted, Lester takes the cash from the job and immediately wires it to all three protagonists' main bank accounts. This is so far from okay. legally, Lester, especially because it's Lester,
I think
Lester
they
should
all
know
did.
better. This would trip off every bad signal everywhere across the board. The IRS, the US government would be on your ass immediately, like Diddy at the after party, without it being laundered and processed over a
Bro,
long
these-
period of time. Now, they don't really have a money laundering scheme. I guess the vanilla unicorn for Trevor. Michael doesn't really have anything. Franklin doesn't really have anything either, so Trevor might have been okay, honestly, but Michael and Franklin would have been absolutely screwed, and Lester kind of screwed them, realistically speaking, by wiring $40 million to all of their bank accounts immediately. Well, not immediately, maybe like 2 months after the job in the story makes sense, but you just can't wire the money that quickly. They would have got arrested immediately. And that is it, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please subscribe and leave a like, and we are almost at 50,000 subscribers. What a journey it's been for sure, and I will continue uploading videos for.
Well, that was interesting, right?